think we have enough. We have a quorum, yes?
Yeah.
I think we do. It looks like it. Let me run down attendance. On roll call, please announce whether you're here or not, or say yes, or say anything you'd like to say. Mary Miskovich. No. Paul Guthrie,
Here.
Deb Russell,
Here.
Jack,
Yep.
Mary Ann Bassett,
Here.
Liz Drury.
Here.
I'm here. Josh, see you there.
I'm here, and Mary Mishovich is here as well. She was waving her hand.
And I
Okay,
think I'm on
and-
now.
thank you, and I didn't look up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dan Shields, I know you're
Yes,
here.
here.
And Amy Lovelace.
I'm here, present.
Oh, good, perfect. Stephanie.
Here.
Okay, good, perfect. Linda Holt.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay McConaughey. I don't see. And Chris Silva. I
Chris had
think,
emailed that he will not be here tonight. Yeah, he's on the road to Canada.
yeah, I got a text from him. He was gonna try to call in.
Okay.
So we'll see. He may yet be able to join us. I don't know.
Yeah.
So let me go through with what the formality of starting this meeting. Okay, it's an open meeting. The Senior Center Committee is being conducted in person and via Zoom. Speakers on the agenda, which we don't have any, may be participating remotely, and the chair will allow the public to provide comments after the agenda is completed. If a member of the public wishes to speak, please raise your hand in the meeting room or on your computer. When called upon, please state your name for the meeting minutes. The Senior Center Committee would welcome public comments, and if there is any further action that is required by the committee, the clerk will add the matter as appropriate to the forthcoming agenda. Depending on the comment, the committee may, if they are able to, within the confines of the open meeting law, respond with information as opposed to needing to deliberate on the matter. Please note, while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast to individual attendees unless otherwise required by law. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, so please take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. That's it. Okay. First item on the agenda tonight. Let me move my page. Oh, where's the agenda? Okay. First item on the agenda is. Bear with me.
Minutes.
Put where I place the agenda. But anyway, the first item on the agenda is to, hopefully everybody received a copy and had a few minutes to review the minutes from our February 1st meeting and our February 15th meeting. Because I would like to, via roll call, I would like to have those meeting minutes approved if possible. Would somebody make that motion to approve the meeting minutes of February 1 and the meeting minutes of February
I have
15th also?
Yeah, what if we have an edit, Jerry?
Yes,
Yeah, I would like to make a note of the meeting minutes of February 1st. Under new business. I would suggest that it says use of an Olympic Village model with activities spread out over multiple sites. Existing sites was mentioned by, I think we should include that was mentioned by Josh Morse. If we could, because it's Jack's leading a discussion, Jack noted. And then I think it would be nice to insert that Josh introduced the idea of the Olympic Village model. if that's correct per.
Can you repeat where you are?
Yeah, so it's it's minutes of February 1st. Number 4, under new business, first paragraph. You know, Jack led the discussion. Jack noted that he has already received, and then you get down to the last sentence of that first paragraph. It says use of an Olymp village model with activities spread out over multiple existing sites was mentioned as an interim solution. I would propose that it say was mentioned by Josh Morse as an interim solution.
Yep, oh, I agree. That's a fair edit.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other edits on the February 1st minutes by anybody?
Well, we haven't had a motion yet, so I make a motion
Correct.
to approve the minutes of February 1st as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion on those minutes?
Who gets credit for the second on that one?
I do.
Okay.
Well, we can vote on that if you want. We can vote on the,
So we'll just vote on the February 1st minutes
That's
right
correct.
now.
that's correct, because we made an amendment to that. Let me go via roll call. With my sheet, February 1st. Mary Miskovich,
Yes.
thank you. Paul Guthrie,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Mary Ann Bassett,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
thank you. I'm a yes. Josh,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
thank you. Stephanie,
Yes.
and that's it for voting members. But I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 15th Senior Center Committee meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Who-
Any
who,
discussion on those?
Who was the person who moved?
Jack and Key.
Jack? Okay.
No discussion on those? Okay, via roll call, we'll approve the minutes of the February 15th meeting. Mary Miskovich,
Yes.
thank you. Paul,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Liz,
Yeah.
I'm a yes. Josh,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
And sometimes when I do the roll call, I'll use your first name and last name. Sometimes it's just a first name. So I try to keep everybody on the edge of their seat and make sure that everybody remembers their entire full name.
I want to hear you say my last name. This is Deb.
I don't want to say it. Roussel,
Data guy. There you go.
is that right?
Yes.
Oh.
Very good, Jerry.
It's not Russell, it's Roussel.
That's right.
All right. Boy, I passed that test. Okay.
Not Roussel, but Roussel.
Let's see, next item on, so we did that. Working group report.
Hooray
Had a
for the
couple of-
working.
Had a couple of busy weeks and a couple of busy meetings. I didn't have them, others did. I'm gonna give this one to Dan, since Dan was sort of the note taker, clerk, curator of this working group. So Dan, I'm gonna let you kind of report on the working group, research of the prior documentation, which is quite extensive. And just as a reminder to everybody for a moment, in order to move ourselves forward, we need to understand where we've been, gain any value from the information that's been gathered over all of these years, There's a number of documents that do have a lot of value to them. And then later this evening, we're going to talk a little bit about finance. Those are two key factors that really play into how we're going to move this whole process forward. So I'll be quiet. Dan, you've got it. Go for it.
Great. So in the beginning of time, Jack produced a already curated list of documents from the perspective of the Senior Center Focus Group. Not all of which documents were from the focus group, but at least the focus group, doing all of their work, had accumulated a number of documents. And Jack had taken a shot at going through what he had and cutting out duplications or whatever, and he presented on, I think, February 1st, during our first meeting, a list of these 33, and then we went through and actually presented a few of the examples on screen. So we started with that, but then we knew that there were many more documents out there from all of the other people who have been active. And so I'm just going to slide down this really quick. Can everyone see a spreadsheet?
Yep.
Can everyone see it at least well enough to pretend to read the words?
No.
Yes, yeah. Yeah,
You can
indeed.
pretend. All right. I'm just going to scroll down so you can get a grasp of the volume. Jack had been good at grouping things because it was 10 years of coverage since 2013, which we had somewhat decided that the final report from the Community Life Committee, I think, that was really the ultimate starting point for us. So Jack grouped things into Mill and Main, things that were relating to aging assessments in various towns, focus group activities, a general and miscellaneous, and then he had a couple of documents relating specifically to the Council on Aging. And then after the February 1st meeting, Deb Roussel had provided a couple of documents, and then we decided to form a working group. And within a day or two before the working group started, Peg Brown emailed me with about 20 items. And then I got documents from Amy regarding the Council on Aging, and some of these things were starting to overlap with other things, which is a good thing because that helped us make sure that we really got the best version of the document. Sometimes there might have been an interim version of a document, and there is a really annoying feature within Microsoft Word documents. If somebody has put a live date field, then as soon as you try to print the document, it flips to today, 2024. It might have been a document from 2021. You can't convert it to PDF. You can't, it's annoying. So it was good to get everything that we did from Amy, even if I'd already gotten it from Jack, because I could help make sure which version do we want to keep as our primary reference document. So there's all this stuff. And then Stephanie had produced a few documents, and then I had accumulated some, which were, some cases duplicates of what everybody already had. And the total of all this is about 89 documents. And so the focus group met Monday, a couple weeks ago, I think. And then again on Tuesday and again on Wednesday. And I can't remember if it was also a Thursday.
Jim, excuse me for a second. Is it the working group or the focus group?
I'm sorry, working group.
Okay, thank you.
The working group, which was Mary Ann Bassett and me and Paul, and as well as, of course, Jack, who was the original contributor. We went through every single line item and we reviewed and we chose which document was the best if there were duplicates. And in some cases, if it was a PowerPoint, then I made a PDF out of it because some PowerPoints are not universally displayable by people, but generally PDFs are. And Word and Excel, usually, no matter what browser you have, people can display it, but not PowerPoint. So some of those things ended up getting replaced. So this was the original list. So I'm going to close that. And what we ended up with was a nice shiny list of 52 items that we decided to keep. And we kept similar groupings. We still have the top group as being the mill and main, and there were two separate events where work was done resulting in a offer from a real estate company. And then there would be supporting spreadsheets and all. Group 2, aging assessments. Group 3, senior center focus group. Group 4 is now Council on Aging. Group 5 are things that are general to the town of Maynard. Group 6 relates to other towns, whether it's Acton or someplace in North Carolina. If we thought that it was useful to hang on to, that's where it went. And then the general and miscellaneous goes down to group 7. So I thought I would take a few minutes to show you some examples of the documents. We have 2 different sets, and you can see that all of these documents are now grouped as 6 mill and main. That was the more recent event that really was coming into focus at the beginning of 2023. And of course, there was work done toward the end of 2022 to support that. There is an 8 mill and main that happened earlier. It happened back in 2021. 2 separate things. So you can now see my collection. So this document is, I think, simply a 1-page diagram of what 6 mill and main looks like. That's useful later because Peg Brown made a nice drawing of it where she manually measured and annotated a version of this and quite a nicely done drawing. So here we have what a proposal might look like in a spreadsheet format. And I have never had any experience in renting real estate commercially. I imagine most of the people on this meeting have not had experience at renting commercial real estate.
Nope.
We're all gonna need to look at this and catch up some. And at some point in a future meeting, it may become necessary for someone who is knowledgeable about real estate to throw something like this in front of us and have to walk us through it. It would be a really good idea for each of us, when we're not under time pressure, to take a look at all of these documents and see if you can figure some of it out for yourself. I think it will save us time when we get down into actually exploring real opportunities that are presented. But in this particular case, you can see that there are 2 options. You don't know from looking at this what the options really are, but you can see that there's different monetary amounts involved. There's square footage cost per month, I think is what these numbers For every rentable square foot, we're gonna pay $19.50 in the first year. And it's every rentable square foot, and it's a whole bunch of square feet in a building like, in the space that we were talking about, so. It adds up to a lot of money every year. All of these numbers down here are just the rent. And of course, I guess we would pay electric
Yes.
at the same time. But there were other things that we would have to pay for. There are other charges, there are taxes, there's the cost of building it out so that we can actually do business as a senior center in one of these buildings. We might have to rent furniture. There's a boatload of things besides these numbers. You'd have to keep in the back of your mind that this is not the final answer as far as expenses. All right, so I'm going to let that one go. I'm just going to show this because it was really nice. It really, at the beginning of January last year, the focus group did a lot of work on getting this site ready for us to go walk around and take a look. And so this brochure was available. And I believe that this is a scan I made of the copy I went home with. I tend to just do that with documents and instead of trying to keep every piece of paper. Because I already had this. But this is an example of some very good work being done to try to demonstrate to the citizens of Maynard, this is what could be a senior center. I'm going to go back in time now a little bit. Here is a proposal document that was from 2021 for a different building in the Mill and Main complex. And without getting deep into the weeds, it's typical for there to be an overview about the entire campus. Wouldn't you want to rent in this campus? Because look at all these buildings and it's easily available. There's amenities, fitness center, store, there's all sorts of stuff that goes along with the brass tacks of, here we go.
Yeah.
Here are the amounts we would pay per square foot. Interestingly, it's the same amounts roughly in the 2021 offer as in the 2023 offer. I know nothing about commercial real estate. I don't know if these are good rates or if they are exorbitant. I don't know if they're competitive. As a committee, we would all have to go to school a little bit on this if we were going to collectively make recommendations to the select board. Scrolling down, you can see that's a really small diagram, but now I never figured out why this says second floor when the text of the offer says
First floor.
first floor. I don't know why it said that, but there we are. Our job here is not necessarily to dive deeply into the past, but to rely on these documents as reference points in case we need them in the evaluation of current opportunities. Anybody have any comments, questions so far? All right, I'm going to let go of that. Going back to our list, we have a number of things under the category of aging assessments. Jack, on his own, had pulled down documentation from different towns. And he took note that they had been done by the same University of Massachusetts, Boston group of professionals that are going to be doing the Maynard study. He found a couple of examples in different towns where they had done studies before that I really think we all ought to look at, not today, tomorrow, but sometime soon. This would be a great thing to read because the Maynard work is starting. At least some of us have received already postcards today from the study organization advising us that if we are interested in participating in the study, here's what to do.
So you want us to read other ones just to get an idea of,
Yes, I think it's a great idea for us to read those in other towns so that we can become more conversant in the methods, what type of data is being accumulated. And they've already got their studies out, so we can read those and then that'll tune our minds to what are the results that apply to the town of Maynard. It's my understanding that the Council on Aging has already been doing a lot of work with these folks to shape the study documents so that it is most applicable to our town. I've only overheard a little bit. Believe it or not, my wife and I do not tell all. So she does not tell me what goes on in the Council on Aging meetings, and I don't ask and I don't look at her computer. But at some point, I think it would make a lot of sense for Council on Aging to come and talk to us about that before the results are known, just so that we can be better tuned to receive the results when they become available. There's a senior center study in Andover. That would be interesting. I mean, demographically, the Andover is not like us.
no,
But it would be interesting to see what they had to say there. You know, there may be some interesting things about Andover, like Andover is a high income place. North Andover isn't. And Lawrence isn't. And maybe the Andover Senior Center is expected to have a footprint big enough to handle Lawrence. I don't know.
no, it isn't.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's an example. I mean, we come into this thing, I don't know, but by the time that we're done, all of us need to become students. I think of as much as we can get in order to,
May I ask a question?
please.
So you started to show us a couple of things and you said you were gonna just show us how you made a decision on which one to keep and which one not to. Are you gonna go through the whole list that way or just an example?
I was just going to throw examples just so that you could see what we kept. In the case of things in the mill in Maine that we did not keep, it was simply that we had many multiple copies. And we just kept the most current or the best versions. In the case of the Word document, where Jack's copy had one date on it and some other copy from Peg had another date on it. And what I got from Amy, I actually got a Word document from Amy that had the earliest date, June the 10th of 2021 for the proposal from the realtor. But if you try to print it, it flips to today. And if you try to convert it to a PDF, it flips to today. So what I actually did was I went into Amy's document, I edited it and got rid of the date field, and I just typed JUNE 10, 2021, and then turned that into a PDF. So yes, I edited history a little bit, but it was faithful to try to recreate a version that was the original document. And then we discarded, I mean, we didn't discard things, we set them aside. A word about the storage method. Right now, in my computer, I'm going to show my files. You'll notice that I have a folder called prior research, and there are two folders, original submissions and reviewed. We started with the original submissions, and there's Jack had groups 1 through 5, and then I decided to put Deb and Peg under the same general heading because it generally was focus group related. So Jack's 33 plus Deb's 2 plus Peg's 20. I think that's 55, are all in here. Then we got some from Stephanie, and you can see as I flash on the screen that there are documents that pop up. I have done the same thing in a Google Drive so that the working group could see everything that I was doing. Everything was in the Google Drive. That's private. That is, since the working group is not a quorum of this committee, we are allowed to be private. Once we as a committee decide to accept this work, I will need to publish that. So I'm only going to be publishing what the committee approves to publish, which I hope will be just the documents that we have recommended to the committee to be public. So anyway, the storage that I have is all the documents, and then everything that we decided to keep is copied into a separate folder. So all of the original things are here, and then copies of what we approved are here. And so if you looked at all of these and added them up, you get to 52, 11 and 6 and 17, etc. If you went all the way through there.
We have a question over here.
Yes,
Go ahead, Liz.
Hi, I just want to be clear. All these documents are only accessible to that small group, determining what stays or goes into the database. We, others of the committee, can't have view until it's all been approved. Is that what you said?
at the moment, I'll repeat, I don't know if everybody could hear Liz's question. Could everyone hear Liz?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. The, right now, today, the only people that can see the pile of original documents are the working group. They're in a Google Drive. I can send you a link to that so that you can see the pile of the original documents.
The only reason why I'm asking that is because I'm making notes of things that you're saying, go get educated, but if I can't get at it, I can't get educated.
Okay, and those will be publicly posted. And not only you, but the outside world will be able to see them.
So will the outside world, the same time she gets to see it the first time?
That's the only, well, I can share with you the Google Drive.
I just don't want to be lagging because I
Yes.
can't get at it because I'm not part of
Especially if
the
somebody
inner
asks
group.
her a question, she doesn't know
Yes.
what's on there.
And actually, I will be
Sure.
sending out the Google Drive link with the minutes for today. Because it will take me a little bit of time to work with the town on getting all of those documents published. There's a multi-step process where I have to upload them to a certain background library. And then either Greg Wilson or someone else with the town has to review it and say, yes, this is not a time bomb. We're going to allow it to be published. And then I have to go in a yet separate step to the website and draw links to that. And only after I've done that third step are things publicly visible to the outside world.
That makes sense.
In the meantime, I can send an email with the list of
Yeah.
finally reviewed and accepted by the working group documents. I can do that at any time.
That would be great. So everybody has them and
Yeah.
then, you don't need to go over them all.
Yep. Hey, Dan,
Yes, sir.
suppose, let's assume now that, tomorrow or next day, when you get time to do it, because I know you've put yeoman's effort into getting all of this documentation together. And I certainly thank you very, very much for, many people don't realize how much effort that you have personally put into this, many, many hours, and we do all very much appreciate that.
Yes, we
If
do.
if you could send out, at least to this committee, the link that you've got for all the documents, so that if somebody wants to look at some other historical document that was chosen by the working group to not make the final cut, they're willing to, they want to look at it, they can look at it. That's fine. I think the working group did a good job on the final cut. I participated in one of the meetings, just listened in. I think you guys have cleaned it up very, very nicely. What I was hoping to do tonight was to take the list that you had, which you put the list up in the beginning of the final cut, the 52 or 55 documents. What I wanted to do tonight was have a motion to accept those documents to be published on the town website for all to see, for all of us and for any other resident of the town or anybody else who can get onto it can go and take a look at those.
Hey,
I would
Jerry,
like- Yes,
I don't know if you can do that because a lot of people haven't even seen it yet. So the people that are on this committee haven't seen them, so how can they approve them?
Yeah, I agree with Deb. This is Amy. I
All right.
can't, I don't think I can approve something I haven't been able to actually. I mean, of course, I submitted some documents, but some of these are
Well,
familiar.
Well,
There's two ways of looking at this. One is to consider whether we were structured and had a reliable process and executed that process and you accept that process, or whether the committee as a whole feels a need to replicate the work that we did to sift the documents, and then that makes it another working group of the whole.
No, I don't think I'm not replicating. I would love to be able, you've done all this great work and then you send this out to us and we all take time to just read through and then we come back for a vote on the great work that you've done. Is that what you're sort of referring to, Deb?
Yes, I have people sitting next to me that haven't seen that at all, and we really are having trouble seeing it on the screen up there.
We can't
So,
read it at all.
I think it's not fair to ask people to vote to accept that if they haven't had a chance to look at it.
No trust.
yeah, we
Now, it's
can do
not a
that.
trust issue, it's, that's
Oh.
reality.
Well, it's a matter of, okay, it's just a matter of, do we want to go through the whole exercise again with the committee of the whole? We need to be.
We're not
clear.
asking to
We
do
need
that.
to
No.
be careful with that.
We're
because-
asking to have people have a chance to look at them, Dan.
At the final list,
Right, the final
not,
list.
not the whole thing. Final.
Jerry, it's up to you.
So you look, so does everybody, because I've looked at a few, but not many, I have to admit that. So are you looking to view everything that has been submitted, or are you looking to view the list that the working group put together, the 52 or 55 documents that they agreed should be moved to the full committee? Is that the list you're looking at, that you want to see those
Yes.
documents? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
Dan,
agree.
Can we
Yes,
make
that
that
can-
available so everybody
that can
on
be
this
done.
committee?
That can be
Good.
done.
All right, let's do that and let's bring this to a vote next time, next committee meeting. Now, keep in mind, I certainly don't expect everybody's gonna, this take a lot of time if you really want to dig into each of these documents. But I would ask that people at least take some time, and review them, so there's a next meeting, we can actually get this uploaded onto the town website. I'm not trying to rush it, but we don't meet for another couple of weeks, so. So
Do you
Dan,
think
can that be available the next day or so, to everybody?
Yeah, I can do that tomorrow,
Okay,
tonight.
So it's the
All right.
list 52 that we're gonna look at,
It-
not the contents of them.
No, it'll be the
It's up to
contents
you. If you
too.
want
I
to look
mean,
at the content.
Okay,
it'll be this list that is currently displayed
Yep.
of the 52 that survived. And all of those documents, they will be in the Google Drive, organized in just the same pattern as I am displaying here.
Am I the only one that hasn't seen?
No,
No, there's a lot of us on the focus group that have seen many of them because we had,
Well, you're doing it,
right,
you submitted them.
so, right, but there's a lot of other people that are at large and that
Right.
have not seen the documents.
right, Amy may not have seen the focus group collection.
Right,
Although Amy provided probably originally a lot of the documents that the focus group got.
and I don't think so.
I've been
So
told that.
there's some overlap. I think the
Told
best
that.
thing, I just want to interject too. I think this is a great place for ground zero. I mean, if we're all reading these documents, then all of us are really oriented to what we're doing, past, present, future. So I think it's just a really good jump start. I
Yep.
appreciate the work.
Well, and it's really a chance all of us can catch up by looking at these documents. Some of the people in this room have been working for years on various aspects of this issue. And people like me who have just recently moved to the state of Massachusetts, well, I've got a lot of catching up to do. And this was a tool that we came up with to help everybody get to the same common initial level of knowledge.
That's great. That's
Mhm.
super.
Okay,
That's what
Perfect.
we need.
So-
what
Go ahead,
the,
Jack.
what the full committee members are signing up for, and I want you to understand it, in the next 2 weeks, you will go through
Mhm.
and look at the documents.
Yep, yep. Yes,
Yes.
Okay, because 2 weeks from now, we need to vote on it. That's all. No, I
Yeah.
agree. I have no disagreement. That's fine with me. Fine with me. So, so any other comments on this right now? This particular issue? So Dan, you can get that out, say tomorrow, so then people can start to, take a look,
Yes.
download, do what they want with it. Perfect. Perfect. I
Dan,
think
Dan, will you
uh,
share it with the liaisons as well?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to look through it. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be everybody on this committee, not just the voting members.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Get to view
Jerry.
it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Sorry, I should have stated that earlier. I didn't. Thank you for bringing it up, Linda. I'd like to move it on since we're not going to vote on this tonight. I'd like to move this on to the new business. We can come back to this again if we have to tonight. But I'd like to move to new business and, oh, guess what? We need to set up another small working group. We need to set up a working group to establish frequently asked questions and have a FAQ page on the website so that anybody in town can take a look. Because a lot of times people come up, gee, I got this question. Well, if you look at the frequently asked questions, your question probably isn't that much different than what somebody else already asked or thought about. So if we can develop the FAQ, it will help, I think, get messages out to people better. People can take a look and say, oh, they're already thinking about that. They've already answered that. That's good. I don't need to send an email to ask somebody about it. So Deb,
yeah.
you were going to kind of lead this group. Do you have any good comments for tonight? Do you have any volunteers
Well,
already?
I've sent out a few emails and Liz Drury, who is from the Friends, has decided she will help us. I did send out a message to the focus group to see if there was anyone on there that had questions or wanted to help with that as well. I was going to send out an email to the liaisons as well to see if they wanted to, anyone on there would like to help. Because I think if we spread it around instead of having the same people doing everything, it'll make it a little better. I also would like to post something on Facebook, if it's okay with the committee, asking the public, what kind of questions are they looking for?
Good.
What
Yeah.
questions they're looking for answers to.
Answers to, yeah.
Yep, that
So
works out
That's
fine.
where
So,
I am, and I'm hoping that's today, Thursday, by Monday, we'll get going on it. I mean, I've already started it, but I want more people to help.
well, perfect. So a couple of things I just want to make sure, and Josh has his hand up. Just hold on a half a second, Josh.
Okay,
I just want to make sure that we keep in mind the quorum.
Yes.
So the working group needs to be 5 people or
4 or 5.
less.
Mhm.
Now, others that you get to contribute to, to help with it and get questions and, any kind of support, that's fine. But from
Okay.
this whole committee of voting members, we can't have more than 5 on this working.
Yes,
group.
I
That's all.
understand.
Good, as long as everybody gets it.
Okay,
Uh,
no problem.
Good, perfect. Thanks, Deb. Josh, go ahead.
Welcome.
Just a suggestion that this is the way I handled it when we started our FAQs over in Newton. I sent something out, and maybe Jerry, you could do this to all the members of the working group, an email just saying, send us 3 questions. You don't need to give us the answers, but just send us 3 questions. You're going to get some duplicates inevitably, but it gives you a good starting point.
Okay, thank you.
I like that idea.
Who was it that you sent it out to, just out of curiosity? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so what I would suggest is out to the entire senior center committee and liaisons, and just ask them, what are 3 questions that either you have or you think residents would have? And it gives you a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah.
You won't have the answers necessarily, but you have half the battle.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, good idea.
I like that idea.
Mhm.
We will take care of that in the next day or so. Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Great suggestions. Thank you, George. Groupings, working group. Any other discussion on the FAQ, setting up a working group and doing what Josh just suggested? I don't see any hands up.
I have a comment.
Go ahead. Jackie.
Another possible avenue, and I guess this is for Stephanie. Did we ever get the senior committee at Town of Maynard email thing set up?
Yes, scc@townofmaynard.net.
Okay, that's another avenue that basically said, publish that, and if you have questions, send them to.
I think Jerry and Dan have access to it.
Yeah, it forwards to their personal email.
Okay.
So
So,
publicize, suggestion is publicize that in the context of if
Yeah.
you have questions.
Yep.
That's a
submit
good
them that
idea,
way.
Jack.
Yep, perfect.
Stephanie, is that already showing on the SEC website, that email?
I'm not sure.
But it will be
Have you
soon. No, I haven't looked at it because I was waiting for this before I started trying to do any publishing work. I was gonna look at it then.
Yeah, I didn't want to mess with it until we knew what you guys were doing, so.
So the next, what happened on Zoom here?
I'm just displaying.
Oh, you're
the-
looking, all right.
I'm just
I'm
displaying
watching
the
this.
senior center committee page.
Yeah.
This little funny resources is the back door, is the gate to all of our documents that will be published.
Who owns this page?
The town.
The town owns it and I have certain editing privileges, subject to review from employees of the town. There's certain people that have to review anything I do before it's publicly visible.
We were off topic though. The next topic was open discussion about
Yep.
funds.
No, it was a matter of, I just wanted to, the question had been asked on this floor, whether there was the senior center committee email in existence.
Yeah,
And it was a matter of, it should be, and it will be at some point soon, displayed here
Yeah.
on this page, but it would also be relevant for purposes of the fact page
Yeah.
creation.
okay, thank you.
Right. Yep, because I know I haven't seen it there yet, but I do know the email does exist. To your point, Craig, Deb, the next item is
Change.
one of the tougher ones that we will all have to face
Yeah.
in the not too distant future. There's a lot of questions we can answer. There's a lot of things we can do. We can pull up history. We can look at property. We can do all these great creative things. Only one thing. You can do your window shopping, but once you walk into the store and you pick up the merchandise, you have to hand over money. So I was going to take a few minutes, and I know Chris De Silva is not able to attend this evening. He is traveling. He was checking with Town Hall. He had a conversation, I believe, with Greg Johnson regarding funding, and it was a limited conversation. And I'm not prepared tonight because I thought Chris was going to be on the call. As I remember, it was more about putting a line item in the FY 25 budget, an unfunded line item, and the discussion, whether they could or couldn't do it. And that was sort of going to be talked a little bit about tonight. But that was a sort of a non-starter anyway. So moving from that, we're going to move to some extensive work that Josh Morse has done in his position in the city of Newton. And Josh has laid out funding opportunities, things to think about, things to talk about. He's laid it out quite nicely. I was going to have Josh take some time tonight to run through it with us, because this, in the end of the day, is the most important thing we're going to end up facing. We have to have money, because otherwise, the statement is talk is cheap. That's sort of the way it is. So Josh, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Jerry. All right. So I will just preface this by saying I do not have all the answers. I am in Newton. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. So I think I've got everything, high level figured out here, but the devil's in the details. And I will be the first one to admit that town structure, town finances might be a little different than city structure, city finances. So with that disclaimer, I'm going to share screen. I'm not going to go through this entire thing because it's wordy, but it'll help me keep my thoughts in order. So we all know there's two major things that we need to accomplish here. We need to figure out a short-term temporary solution, and temporary could be defined as a few years to many years. And then we need to figure out the long-term solution. Long-term solution being most likely a new senior center in some respect. The short-term space needs, Maynard is a small town. There's not a lot of options out there. Our town facilities don't have the capacity to take on what this community needs based on the senior population. They can help complement it as they are doing now, but they don't have a central place to call home. And we all know that the current facility over in the golf course is just not adequate. So there's also very little commercial real estate available in town. This was found out very quickly by the senior center committee, or the senior center focus group rather, and others who started looking around to see what was available. Not surprisingly, the mill is one of a few, if not the only option that I think is going to be viable for us. To the question that was asked earlier about the cost for commercial real estate, high teens, low 20s is very reasonable these days. And that's without me even getting into what the specifics are. The devil is in the details. We'll need more information, and I know just enough to be dangerous on that front. But it's not out of the park by any means. So we know that we need to find a temporary location. I worked under the assumption that it's the mill, unless somebody comes up with something else. And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't keep our options open, but that seems like the most viable. So what are the funding options? How do we address the short-term space needs? Because as Jerry said, this really all comes down to money. It really does. So there's a few things to think about. First of all, a lease is an ongoing expense. For a city or town to enter into a lease, they need to commit not just one-time money, but they need to commit real money ongoing each year. And that becomes a bit of a rub. There's not to say you couldn't, theoretically, if you had $1 million of free cash, could you commit to a 5-year lease with that? Sure, you could. It would be very unusual. And I'll get into it in a little bit. It's likely not going to happen. And there's a reason why would be very unusual. So what it means is that we really need to have those annual funds available to us. So free cash could be used to front load, but the town is going to need, and town council is going to need, some sort of assurance that there is ongoing money in the out years to be able to continue to pay that lease. So there really are only 4 options. There's hybrid versions of each of these, but really it falls into 4 buckets. We commit revenue from new growth. We cut from another part of the budget. We make more aggressive budget assumptions and free up annual revenue, or we secure additional funding through an override. There have been some people who have suggested that some of our local receipts, whether it be marijuana money or rooms tax, although we don't have a lot of rooms tax here, but meals tax, could that go towards a lease? The thing is that a lot of people don't realize that receipts are part of the annual revenue, and they go to pay our annual expenses as a town, just like any city or town. So those are spoken for, those are baked into the budget each and every year. So it's not extra money we get each year. So committing revenue from new growth. The other thing I'll just point out is that Maynard, like every community in the Commonwealth since Proposition 2.5 passed, and Proposition 2.5 for those folks that don't know, limits our rate of revenue growth to 2.5% with respect to property taxes, excluding new growth. Meaning, and new growth is defined as residential or commercial development or redevelopment that comes onto the books each year. So for this next year, we're looking at $300,000 in new growth. Right? So on one hand, you might think that's perfect. It's more money than we need for the senior center lease. The problem is that everybody knows that inflation has been crazy high over the last few years. Ignore that. Just pretend that didn't exist. The reality is that municipalities, just like any private business, have been experiencing inflation greater than 2.5% forever, essentially. There's been a few years here and there where it's dipped below that, but overall, it trends far above it. Complicating matters is that Maynard's new growth is pretty low. You'll see on this chart, this was Parker Street development. You know, it gave us a nice bump, but we're right back down to where we were. And there's no reason to expect that we're going to see anything major coming down the line. The Powder Mill corridor may help a little bit. It's still a long ways out. Even with that, Maynard just has limited land to be developed and limited opportunities for redevelopment. So the reality is new growth barely gets us up to 3% ish. And that's essentially where we struggle as a town to be able to just maintain our core services. So that $300,000 is spoken for, and it's relied upon every year in order to balance the budget. Cutting from another part of the budget. So this is tough. This is very tough because every department is going to explain why their programs, services, or needs are critically important. As well they should. That's how it works. There's a few things to think about on that front too. And I explained this past summer, for some folks may have seen it. Maynard is at the bottom of the charts for Middlesex County for new growth revenue, state financial aid, and we've had less operating overrides than nearly every other community in Middlesex. So again, Maynard Crossing helped, gave us a little bump, but the reality is trying to cut $75,000 or $150,000 from the town budget is extremely difficult. I don't think we'll be successful on that particular one. So another option, make more aggressive budget assumptions to free up annual revenue. This one is interesting, and it could be a possibility, but it's not without downfalls. So every city or town, when they develop their budget, they make budget assumptions. And what those assumptions are is you assume how much revenue you're going to get from excise taxes or from meals taxes. You make assumptions about interest-bearing accounts and any potential revenue that's coming in outside of your property taxes, which are very predictable. You make assumptions on. Same thing with new growth. For a municipality that makes very aggressive assumptions, they can expend more in their budget. The problem with that is that the more aggressive your budget assumptions are, the tighter you have to run your city or town, because if any of those assumptions were overly aggressive, you run the risk of going red. And that's not something that any city or town should or can do. So what ends up happening, the flip side of that is that if you make too conservative assumptions, you under expend your budget and you are not investing in things that your city or town really needs, and you end up with more free cash in the fall. And I'll explain what that is in just a sec. Actually, I'll explain it right now. When a city or town makes their budget assumptions, they are, the state recommends that cities and towns maintain between 3 and 5% of their annual budget as free cash. Free cash is essentially, a lazy way of explaining it is it's leftover money at the end of the fiscal year that becomes certified in the fall, meaning that the state certifies it's there, and then it's available for expenditure. It sounds kind of funny because leftover money implies that we didn't need it, but quite frankly, we really do, because nobody ever budgets perfectly. You're not going to you're not going to get to the end of the year with $0. And you want to have a healthy amount of free cash, and one-time money is very important to the financial health of any city or town. So how does Maynard stack up? So I mentioned 3 to 5%. Maynard's about 4%. So they're about right where you'd want to be. You can go a little more, you can go a little less. So Maynard, over the last 10 years, you can see we've been historically, you know, in the high ones, low twos. I would ignore the COVID years. Everybody was upside down at that point. But I'd say that in general, this fall, we're probably going to be in that $1.5 million to $2 million range of free cash, maybe a little higher because interest-bearing accounts are pretty good right now. So here's the problem. We could make a minor tweak. For perspective, if the town decided or dedicated $150,000 a year for a senior center lease, it would equate to roughly a 2% or 0.2% decline in free cash reserves. So you could go from 4% to 3.8%, still be well within the recommended range of the state. No brainer, right? Problem is that Maynard, because of all of those financial limitations that I mentioned, and being on the low end of nearly every category from a revenue standpoint, relies heavily on that free cash every fall to address our capital needs. And by address, I mean barely makes a dent in our capital needs. There's a lot that our town needs, and there's just limited resources to get there. So if we were to push the town to tweak their budget assumptions, we could free up that money, but it means that we're going to have less free cash to address all those capital needs in the fall. The other possibility, the fourth, is to secure additional funding through an override. So this is always a sensitive subject with folks, but I'm going to be very blunt. I strongly believe that Maynard Public Schools is going to be seeking an operating override in the spring of 2025. That is their news to deliver. I'm not suggesting I have insider knowledge. I just know enough about finances. I watch the budget closely, and it's a small town. So we have an opportunity, and I should say that for any community, if you're looking for a spring vote, you need to announce in the fall. If you want to announce in the fall, you need to be planning for it in the winter before. That's where we are right now. So if I'm Maynard Public Schools, I'm already building my case right now. So I'm not going to go through the entire thing here, but the bottom line is that the override is probably our best bet to secure long-term funds for our short-term solution as well as our long-term solution. And I'll explain that in just a second. The one thing one of the reasons that I'm bringing this up now is that I don't want seniors being left in the dust on this, right? If we're not getting out ahead of this, we're going to get left behind very quickly, because we need to be building our case behind the scenes so that we're ready whenever anybody else goes live. And we need to be communicating and working collaboratively, I think, with both Town Hall, FinCom, the Select Board, and Maynard Public Schools. So there's a few things that I might suggest on this front. I think that we should be trying to secure $150,000 a year in that override. It works out to about 9 cents per day for the average taxpayer. And I'll just caveat to confirm that I'm basing that off of extrapolating data from the previous Green Meadow School override. Part of the reason why, so it seems a little strange that you would ask for an operating override, which is a permanent increase for a short-term need, but there's a strategy there that I think is actually going to be very, very good for Maynard. So I think the reality is that trying to secure $150,000 a year from our existing budget will prove very challenging, if not impossible. I think that we should seek $150,000 in the override vote that occurs in the spring of 25, would go into effect the summer of 25. And I think the conversation that we need to have is how we secure, if we can secure this coming year's money so that we can enter into that lease sooner rather than later. I will be very honest with you. The challenge with that is that we're going to have to take the temperature of town hall and town council, because if we were to get money to cover that first year of the lease, it would mean that we are entering into a lease where the out years are paid for by a source of funds that is yet to be approved. That could be challenging. And I'm just going to be honest with everybody about that.
Yeah.
So that'll be something we have to discuss and grapple with as a group. So long-term space needs. In order to address, I'll put it very plainly. If we want to build a senior center, it all starts with getting money approved for a feasibility study. The feasibility study done in Andover was the same architect that I have on my project in Newton, BH+A. They've done 1 million of these. If folks have questions, just let me know. The fire station took forever. We all know it. It didn't get going until the town went and got money to start the feasibility study. That's how it starts. You bring an architect on board and you get going. And once you get the money and you start design, projects happen. They will not happen without that. So what is a feasibility study? Briefly, existing conditions evaluation report, review and incorporate the UMass report. As Jerry and others pointed out, those UMass reports, that's pretty much how most communities start their senior center projects. Space program development. So that's where you develop, once you know what you have, you develop an Excel spreadsheet that identifies the square footage of what you have, the square footage of what you need, and then you go from there. They'll do a site search and selection process, and then conceptual design development. And basically they'll start creating floor plans and renderings of what the building will look like. Basically what you're trying to get to by number 5 is enough marketing material to be able to sell this to town at town meeting. So tying it all together, I don't have much left here. The reason why I think the $150,000 makes a lot of sense for the short term as part of the override is that one thing that people oftentimes do not think of when they're building new facilities, especially when you're coming from a small, undersized space like we are here in Maynard, is they don't think about the operating costs of a new building. So the reason why I think it makes a lot of sense to go after $150,000 as a permanent increase in town funds for the senior center is that it helps us address our short-term needs by paying for that lease. But when the lease is up and we move into the new facility, we craft this language appropriately in the warrant, and that $150,000 rolls right into paying for the operating expenses, the increased operating expenses of the new senior center, whether that be staff or utility costs or maintenance. The rest of this is just closing, but that's it. And I will, just one sec, I'm going to, because I think it's timely, couldn't have made this up. So to get people excited about the future, this was me today speaking at our formal groundbreaking event for our senior center in Newton. We had a few hundred people show up. We've worked for 6 years on this project. It all started with a very similar conversation I had with the Council on Aging there, just being blunt about what our options are and what it takes to get a project going. Questions, comments?
Josh, you mentioned a little bit earlier that you really expect that the school committee is going to ask for an override. I think you said for the fiscal year 25. Do you expect that is just for operating costs that they can't get with their current budget? Or is it because of the bleachers project, or is it because of some other construction need that is looming?
Yeah, it's operating. So, and they're not alone. You're seeing it everywhere right now. Cities and towns school districts are hurting. What we did see over the last 3 to 4 years is inflation and escalation has hit school departments and municipalities incredibly hard. Again, Proposition 2.5, limiting it to 2.5%. Most communities right around 3% if you include new growth. We saw annual inflation of many of our categories at 8 to 10%. You get that 3 or 4 years in a row. And really what's happening is, you know, I've worked for government forever now. The old adage of do more with less. But at some point, what you're doing is it's deep cuts. It's harmful. And I think what you're seeing with the schools, in the case I would be making if I were them, which that I'm sure they will make, is that many communities are passing these overrides, and they're doing it because the needs of students have never been greater. While enrollment is down slightly in many districts, the pandemic hurt, and it's going to hurt for many decades. And because those needs are so much greater, with those increased needs come increased costs, and you're having those increased needs and costs at a time when everything, transportation, utilities, everything is incredibly expensive right now. It's gone up so much in the last few years that it's requiring cuts to personnel and programs in the schools and other departments in town as well.
Okay, I don't have a solution, but several comments. I like what Josh has put together. It does encapsulate pretty much everything that we're facing. At one point, I had voiced to a couple of people about literally going to an override at this spring's town meeting. That basically means we'd have to get our ducks in a line in about 3 weeks, and that's not realistic. So whether it's an override for us in the fall or whether spring of 2025, I don't know. But a concern that I immediately voiced, given the need for the schools to have an override, and I also agree with Josh, there will be an override probably for operating expenses, but sitting in the middle of that is an expected override for the bleachers. And that now totals about $3 million with improvements to Alumni Field. I bring that up because I think Josh has sort of stated, you know, Maynard supports these kind of things. I think there's going to be a fair amount of resistance. And so my fundamental question, fundamental question number one, not to be addressed or pontificated upon tonight, is whether a separate override rather than bundling with the school department. If we bundle, and that there is backlash on the schools, we get caught up in the flack for that. So at some future point, if we want to do an override, is it on our own or, you know, combined with some others? That's one point. My other fundamental point that still is a sticking point in all of this, particularly for leases, the municipal procurement processes that have been held up to me and literally mentioned at select board meetings is we, the town, cannot go solicit a proposal for lease space until funding is identified. And identified is more than committed, is effectively committed funding. And if I'm the vendor who wants to provide space and you come to me, well, I have 1 year's worth of funding, I'm not going to be terribly responsive. So there's that catch-22 that we need to find a way around. I don't think we, the town, have been terribly pure about it in the past because there have been outreaches without funding agreed to. So that's another issue that needs to be addressed here. The third point that I want to make, I think we have an obligation as a senior center group. In the materials which were mentioned in our earlier conversation in terms of the historical materials, was a piece of paper that lists the potential facilities looked at by the senior center focus group. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, Amy, as part of the COA, had also identified other facilities and so forth. So combined across those two lists, we basically have wound up at a point where the only one that's sort of really viable is the mill. And yet, I don't think we would be complete in our discussions unless we brought that list up to date. What are the potential leased spaces which might be available in this community? And I will spit off the top of my head, there are probably 3 or 4. The mill being at the forefront of it, it's central, its space has been available literally there for 10 years. The second one is the Beijing School, which is an outlier in the town, but they have made noises about making space available. A third one, which was actually mentioned by Chris in one of the earlier meetings before the Senior Center Committee got formed, was potentially in Maynard Crossing. I have no idea what the spaces cost out there. They're struggling to fill that up. They're building 2 new buildings. They have now a commitment for a third new building, which will be the Tractor Supply place. I would think some conversation there that say, hey, you know, it's going to be a lease, it'd be 5 years, 7 years, and then it can revert to retail, but that's another potential one. And the fourth one, which is, I'm going to guess a dark horse, again, something Chris DeSilva mentioned, that the State Police Crime Lab on Acton Street is going to move out. Whether that's available in whatever time frame, I have no idea. But my point in this remark is I think we owe it to the town to say these are the potential available spaces. And we're still faced with, if you want to engage with any of those, we have to be able to say we have the money. So we're stuck in that do loop as well. So those are my comments.
Linda Holt has had her hand up, and I think she's going to offer some free cash from the Finance Committee, but I'm not sure. Go ahead, Linda.
I had some questions. One is, we're now in the golf course. As we put this forward, do we have any savings from vacating the golf course? I mean, in terms of utilities, somebody else could use the space. We could, you know, the town could get revenue from that space to mitigate this. It's saying
No,
nobody would rent the space with no savings.
no, there would be no,
savings.
the savings would be potentially the utilities. So within the Council on Aging operating budget, there's an expense line for utilities, and so for
And no one else would ever rent that space, so the town would generate.
Well, you see, that's the whole the whole sticky wicket up there is that the use of that space needs to be appropriate.
Okay, okay.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
we all know that technically it's not appropriate use
Okay.
to Council on Aging there, and so the cost saving would be currently this fiscal year, it's $7,600 for the COA's portion of utilities. That's what.
And then Amy, as we develop a new senior center, do you like for fees that people would pay for programs, is that all revenue neutral? We're not, if we had a great senior center, we can't make a profit from running better programs that would mitigate the lease costs, or can we defray some of the lease costs if we had programs and
not
charge?
Not strictly. I mean, the only program expense, you know, if we had a space where we had a pickleball court, we wouldn't be paying the fee to the Boys and Girls Club, which is nominal. The charge per hour for using the pickleball court.
So that would be nominal. If we had a space with programs, we can't even defray some of those lease costs. Okay.
Yeah.
Josh, in your experience, is there any opportunity for any grants, any other funding for senior facilities, senior developing senior programs? Could we go after any other source of funding except an override? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, so it's tough. I'll tell you that there's I don't know of any grants that you'll find that are that you'll get an annual revenue source.
Yeah.
You can get one-time money. The only way that I've seen that be successful is state earmark grants. We were able to secure one for our senior center project. That actually is not bad because the folks on the Hill love to support seniors because you're the largest and fastest growing demographic in the Commonwealth too. So there's a lot of voters there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so that would be, but that would be more permanent construction, like buying or even a feasibility study or something?
Yeah, so they gave us $100,000 towards our feasibility
Okay.
study.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Actually, if we wanted to declare seniors as a recreational asset, we could apply for community preservation money.
You know,
So-
Jack, you're not,
We're a historic asset.
it's
Also, we
not,
are
We
historic.
count twice.
it's actually, so here's the thing. Jack actually raised a really good point. What I will say is that if Maynard is willing to make this a multi-generational center,
Yeah.
it is then really truly recreational. And it does open up the possibility of CPA funds. And if we were to do that, I would recommend that we look at floating a bond. And that's how you really leverage the power of CPA. It wouldn't pay for the whole thing, but it could certainly help.
Well, again, a comment, and this is, I'm going to share it because I've been working on it. Its chance of success, I will announce beforehand, is slim to none. I have asked Kate Hogan's office to consider pushing amendment to the CPA legislation, allowing funding of senior center kinds of things to be incorporated into the CPA legislation. My announcement up front that that's slim to none, people need to understand it took the state 20 years to pass the original CPA legislation. But if in fact that could come to pass, there is enough money in Maynard CPA structure to probably cover a bond for a lease. Certainly, it might not cover permanent construction and so forth.
Good. Excellent. Well, I'm glad you did preface it too, Jack. That helped. But so,
I'm an idealist. What can I say?
yeah, no, that's very good. That's very good. And Josh, thank you very much, one, for the work that you did on this.
Yeah.
And for presenting it tonight. Very well organized. Gives everybody lots of options to look at. Granted, a number of the options, they probably won't work, but it saves people from later on saying, oh, what about, we kind of already sort of looked at that and we need to prioritize them. So I'm going to
Right.
suggest something tonight.
Jerry,
And hello.
let me, I sense we're getting near the end of this.
Yes.
Josh brought up something that I suspect as this committee gets past the interim and begins to focus on the permanent or long-term,
Mhm.
the community is going to ask of us, please consider a community center.
Yeah.
I say that because the Community Life Center thing 10 years ago, that was exactly the path. It started off as complaint driven, we need a new senior center. And as we got into the practicalities of trying to address that, it very quickly became, this is more workable, palatable, appropriate if we do consider it as a multi-generational thing. So raising the flag that I think that's coming down the pike toward us.
And I agree, Jack. I think that's one of the questions in the survey. So the UMass survey. That UMass survey is going to be useful. There's a specific question in there that's asking, what the interest is and in what type of facility. So that's going to be a powerful piece of.
And I'll say the interesting thing, I'll loop this back to what Linda was asking about, right? If Maynard were to say, let's say that we decided we're going to build a senior center, just an exclusive senior center. Guess what? It's going to be a multi-generational center, whether we call it a senior center or not. Because the reality is, if you're going to build all that facility, there's going to be demand for that space. You're going to want to rent it. And who's going to be renting it nights and weekends? You'll have some seniors, but you're going to have people of all ages. So the vast majority of communities who built senior centers actually operate them as multi-generational facilities, as community centers. So.
So to keep a focus on this for the larger body, that's sitting here this evening, I would like to make a suggestion that we consider having another working group. I would certainly see two people who could possibly be on that working group that would maybe even want to volunteer. One might be Josh, one might be Jack. And since Krista Silver is not in attendance this evening, I'd even volunteer his name to go in, but I did already talk to him about it. I talked to him already. And he would be willing to, based upon time availability, help out. I do think we need to have a working group on this. As everybody has seen tonight, this is going to be the make or break. We can discuss everything we want, but without money, we can't do any of it. So this is probably the most important item that we've really got to go through. Would everybody here tonight agree that we would need a working group to work on to look at the financial aspects of how to move this whole process forward? I can't define it. I don't.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm hearing lots of yeses and thumbs up.
Yeah.
So Josh and Jack, would you folks, just like being in the Army again now, or the Navy, whichever branch you want,
Volunteer.
would you be willing to be volunteered to work on this working group? Yes, Josh?
Well, while the Navy stands for never again volunteer yourself, I will step forward.
Okay, good. And Jack, how about you?
Well, the Army probably has an equivalent saying, but sure.
Hmm?
You can't say it in mixed company though, right, Jack?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll have to ask Krista Silva which branch of the service he wants to agree to defend.
Right.
Okay, so it looks like now we're going to also be capturing the minutes that we will have a working group dealing with finance. The definition of it, I don't know, but finance for this project. Are there any other issues that we got to bring up tonight? Because it's now 8:26. I like to try to end these in an hour and a half, so 8:30, so to be a magic time. We go over, that's fine. Are there any other issues that need to be brought to the attention of this committee at this moment?
Gary, can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
So I will
Please.
give you the same very brief pep talk that I gave our group when we started. Seniors, so in any city or town, the focus is always going to be on pretty much anything but a senior center. When I visited 40 some odd senior centers, they all said the same thing. It took them forever. And the reason it took them forever is because it was very difficult for the group to galvanize. It may seem strange here in Maynard that there's multiple groups. You got the Council on Aging, the Senior Center Focus Group, the Friends of. The reality is Maynard's not unique in that way. I saw it everywhere I went, and it took time for them to galvanize, come together, and start rowing in the same direction. I'll tell you, the sooner this group comes together and is all swimming in the same direction and starts really advocating for the needs here, the sooner this thing will become a reality. So it's ours for the taking, but we have to keep the pressure up.
I think
Good.
the word you were trying to use is make waves.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sailor.
Well, and the Navy can do that quite well.
We can.
Yeah, see, so perfect.
Mhm.
Any other issues? Thank you, Josh. That was very good, on point. Any other issues? I don't see any hands raised or people yelling. I would accept probably one of the most important motions of the evening if somebody would like to make it.
Do we need any public comments first? or-
Who's here in the public? Do we have any? I'll open up the public comment.
Just
but I-
asking.
Yeah, no, you're right. I opened
Okay.
up, but I didn't see anybody on the list, so I didn't,
Okay.
I kind of skipped over that.
It's online.
Good procedural point, thank you. Now I would entertain
I make
a
a
motion.
motion. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:30.
8:29.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Paul.
And
By
our
roll,
next meeting will be,
Oh, yeah, next meeting will be March 21st. That correct? I think it is.
Yes,
2 week, yep, second and third Thursday. All
Mhm.
right. Roll call on the motion to adjourn. Mary Miskovich.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Paul,
Yes.
Deb,
yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Josh, you a yes? I didn't
Yes.
hear you, Josh. Oh, I'm
Yep,
sorry.
sorry.
Good. That's all right. Dan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
that's all the voting members. It's unanimous. Meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you very much, folks. Good meeting tonight. Good discussion.